Mike? This morning's sermon is a little bit unusual from the standpoint. I generally start off, here's positive things and let's go get them. In this request, it was, how do you deal with all the craziness of the world situation and have this attitude of, like this last song, I just look to thee, I cast all my care on thee, and I'm not anxious, and we'd say, just chill out. Isn't that, you all are that way all the time. Well, maybe not all the time. And so how do you deal with that sort of thing? Well, what about our country and everything going around? The reality is civilizations do not last forever. For instance, the Aztecs from Central America lasted 200 years. Spanish invasion, disease, and so forth. But the Mayans as well from Central America, 3,500 years. But then, drought, deforestation, overpopulation, they were too successful for their own good, and what happens, happens. The Mycenaeans from Greece lasted 600 years. Natural disasters, political instability, invasion stuff happens in life. The Anasazi from Arizona, people say the Anasazi disappeared. They didn't get sucked up by an alien ship. They lasted 300 years, but deforestation, prey depopulation, they were too successful and ran out of resources. Now, what happens is people look around at all kinds of fears. And I started listing some that are really jaw-dropping. And I thought, Paul, lighten up. Because Glenda told me when she was, I don't know how old she was, I'll say 11 or 12, went to school or something, they talked about, atomic war, and she came home, Dad, we got to build a bomb shelter in the backyard today. He said, no, we're not doing that. Now, I want to talk about some of these things that all are in the realm of possibility, not likely to happen in your lifetime, your children's lifetime, but I don't want you to go away from this and saying, we need to move to Guyana. We got to get out of the rest of the world, live in the jungle. Because we serve a God in whose hand we are. There's where I'm going with this. And so I lightened it up because at first I got down to wow. But the reality is there's all kinds of things, not just nuclear war. What about global? Everybody decides to get in on it at once. But it doesn't have to be that massive. Personal health loss. Other people worried about alien invasions. I think about that. We send radio waves. Hi, we're out here. If there's somebody else out there, maybe you don't want to invite them for a barbecue. And some people are worried about demons. What about this or that? What about economics, not just having a downturn, but collapse, global collapse, no food, fuel, medicine, trade agreements, everything fails. About that time you say, well, man, we might as well give up right now. We serve a God who never gives up. What about global warming? People say, well, it doesn't happen. What appears to be happening. And the big deal is they say there's a tipping point at which once you cross that threshold, it becomes unstoppable. Well, that's scary. But we see some notable weather conditions now, and drought and hurricanes and flooding, and from that you get food loss. And here's the thing that I like the idea of, but like everything else, it has enormous danger. AI, artificial intelligence. I really like it. And Vince is to blame. Because he said, man, there's this great little app you can go through. If you go to Google, try to find stuff, it's really a little boring. Just go to this one, I just talk in, ask it, blah, 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 blah. Well, here's the thing. It's SI, what they're saying. And they're saying, in fact, I asked the app itself, look, there's a danger with artificial intelligence. They say there is. It has, that right now it's like a toaster. You don't worry about it. You put bread in there. You make sure you don't stick your finger in there. Is the toaster aware that it's a toaster? And the answer is, no, it's just a toaster. It's metallic and wires and such as this. But the concern is, what if AI gets so smart that it outperforms everything else and become self-aware. Hey, I do stuff you guys can't do. Becomes super intelligent, and then adopts its own value system that's not aligned with yours. In fact, you are inhibiting its growth. And wow, wouldn't that? And then it becomes weaponized and blah, 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 blah. And so I asked AI all that stuff. They said, well, yeah, but that is so far in the future. What about a cyber attack? Joy and Ben went to Florida here a week or two ago, and guess what? Alaska Airlines computers went kapooty for the second time this year. But that can't happen. Oh yeah, it happens not all the time, but fairly frequently. It doesn't generally happen twice the same year. But what if there's, an attack by terrorists on the power grid, on financial institutions, military, food, medical, air travel, whatever it is. Asteroid impact, and you get 1,000 years ice age, global pandemic by accident or by terrorist, major extinction event. Well, the reality is you have to figure out, who do you trust? Do you trust the government? Well, not totally. Well, pretty much. Well, no, not very much. There are a bunch of guys that got their own mixed things, and it gives a degree of peace. Well, you trust science. They'll never make a mistake. They're not always in our best interest. The reality is, who do you trust? I trust God. And that's where this lesson is going. Who do you trust? And so I wrestled back and forth. Is that how I want to entitle it? Or why Christians have hope? But essentially it's the same thing. I have hope because of who I trust. And so here's just a handful of things that gets us recentered. When the nutty stuff in the world happens, you say, oh man, might as well give up now. Let's just lay down in the street, have buses run over us. The reality is, humans have repeatedly come back from major, either poor decisions or natural events. Spanish flu killed 1 million, how many ever people. You have a dozen massive things that people recovered from. Don't lose heart because bad things happen. You have hope because of whose hand you hold. Let's look at a handful of these. You say, why don't you just curl up in a blanket and hide in the closet? Because God is still on the throne. In Psalm 103:19, the Lord has established his throne in the heavens, and his sovereignty, that is, his right to govern, rules over all. He makes the final decision. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know God has control. And so think about this. When the world seems out of control, God is not pacing the floors of heaven saying, what am I going to do now? In Proverbs 21 and verse 1, the king's heart is like the channels of water, and he turns it wherever he wishes. So think about, in particular like in central Washington and other places, where you have a lot of irrigation going on. Well, you open this gate because you want this field to receive the life-giving water, close that gate, and so forth. God says that's how I work with nations. I determine who rises and who falls. Paul, do you sleep well at night? Yeah, I sleep great at night. So about 3 or 4 in the morning, say, hello, I'm awake now, and whatnot. So sometimes I just get up and work for a couple hours. But I'm not fretting about world events. Why? Because I know who I trust. Why do Christians have hope? Because God is omniscient. There's a bunch of these nebula, dust clouds, and there's one, this is probably an artist's reproduction of one that's called that. The common one is the eye of God. This is dust cloud, but it's beautiful. And why do you have hope? Because nothing catches God by surprise. He's omniscient. He knows everything. And David says, Psalm 139, verse 4, before there is a word on my tongue, you know it all. And sometimes you can see kids like that, Somebody else has an ice cream cone that a little 4-year-old's eyes light up and they take a breath. You don't have to ask. You know what they're going to say. God always knows what's going on. And in Proverbs chapter 15 and in verse 3, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and on the good. So God knows what's going on. We just don't know what's going on. In fact, I don't think our government knows what's going on, but that's true in all governments. Our uncertainty is not his uncertainty. He already knows our tomorrow. So that's really the answer to it. How do you deal with that? God's got to figure it out. Don't you worry about it. No, it's going to work out. The people that owned this building before us, that they had an elder that was, this is a Christian church group, had an elder that was kind of the point man in showing it to us and getting things set up financially. And so I was interested in how they saw different things, and he had a little more relaxed view of things than I would, and maybe that's so because he's part of the Christian church. And so one of the things I asked him, I wanted to see, are they really targeted still on the principles that they were 100 years ago? The Christian church used to believe really firmly baptism is necessary for the forgiveness of sin. So I'm asking this guy, I'm not grilling him, we're just sitting in the foyer chatting. I said, can I ask you a question? Kind of what's your sense now of the essentiality of baptism? Do you really have to do it in order to be a Christian? And he's a little more laid back. He said, well, I just figure if it's good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me. I said, well, that's a little looser than I would respond, but okay. And then I asked him, can I ask you, what is your opinion on this whole idea of premillennialism? And how there's, any day now, God's going to set up his kingdom rather than he set it up in AD 33. And it'll be absolute paradise. There's no sin, no sinners, all this kind of thing. And he said, well, yeah, some people are premillennialists. That is, they think it's going to happen in the future. Some are amillennialists. They don't think that kind of physical kingdom is going to be set up at all. And I thought, wow. I would say I agree with it that far. And how are you? He said, I'm a pan-millennialist. And I said, what's that? He said, I just believe everything's going to pan out all right in the end. And so he didn't much think about all those kind of things. God is omniscient. Why do Christians have hope? Because we trust in God. God promises to provide. In Philippians chapter 4 and down in verse 19. My God will supply all your needs according to his riches in glory in Christ Jesus. Our hope doesn't rest on government or on economy, but on God's abundance. So, yeah, but what if they make this trade, and what if there's a dip, and I don't have any control of that. I have control of my attitude and my trust in God. God, you're going to have it work out all right. There's going to be dips. The market's going to go down, it'll go up. It'll go down and go up. There'll be threats. There's always threats of war. There's threats of war everywhere in the world. You have to make a determination, who do I trust? I trust the news reporters. I don't trust them at all. I trust God. Almost all the time, somebody will say, do you know the blah, blah, blah? I have to fact check it as best I can because I don't trust the news sources. I don't trust the TV reporters. I don't trust the newspapers. I don't have much confidence in the government. I have a little confidence in our local police, but I'm not in control of all those things. I trust God who's going to provide. Why do we Christians have hope? It's because we trust God. Here's a passage, and that I'll talk about, people find a little controversial, but I don't think they ought. In Jeremiah 29:11, Jeremiah, prophet for his people Judah, and speaking as a spokesman for God, I know the plans I have for you to prosper you and not to harm you, to provide a future and a hope. And that's one of the things that gets people just to the brink when they feel like I have no hope. One of the things why people suicide, they don't see a logical way out. They're like trapped in a steel room that's electrified, and they're in pain all the time, and they can't figure out why nobody else responds like they do. And if you want to get an idea, let's say the door's locked. It's all steel walls. And the furniture is steel, the floor is steel, and everything they touch, everywhere they're in pain all the time, but there's a window. And so sooner or later, some people, man, I'm jumping through the window. I don't know what's on the other side, but I'm going out. They're in pain all the time. They don't have hope. Well, God said, I want to tell you, my people have a hope. We've got a future. Yeah, but God's people went through stuff. God's people went into captivity and they came out. God's people were taken into slavery and they came out. God has always taken care of his people. Jerusalem was destroyed. The Christians were not. We got out. Think about this. In exile, the people were assured. Jeremiah's words are telling them, you got a future and a hope. Now, as you think about that, yeah, but that was them. Fair enough. But in Romans chapter 4, verse 16 and 17, we're in the lineage of Abraham by faith. We're in that same lineage that God promised his people, I'm going to watch over you. You've got a future and a hope. Think about this. Yeah, but Paul, what if you get out and you get run over by an Uber driver? I want to tell you, I got a future and a hope. Yeah, but man, he just whacked you. You didn't survive that. That's okay. I've got a future and I got a hope. God is the one watching over us. That's why I can trust God. Why do we trust God? Because he has designed for us not to have a fearful attitude. Fear isn't from God. I just love lions, and I love that, the male lion, it's powerful. And 2 Timothy 1 and verse 7, Paul tells Timothy, God has not given us a spirit of fearfulness, or other versions have timidity, but of power, love, and self-control. It is thought because of this and other things that Paul said to Timothy, that Paul would have converted him on his first missionary journey, took him with him on his second missionary journey, became one of the most trusted, beloved, not only converts, but Paul referred to him as my true son. Now, the problem is not everybody has the same attitude. And I was talking with Linda recently that Titus seemed more of a kind of, man, I am ready to get it on. And so Paul sends him to Crete. And man, these guys, their own poet says they're lazy gluttons and liars. And they have that, Ben Comba said he was there, and they have that as a wall plaque in the post office. Hey, that's who our really historians said of us. But he didn't send Timothy there. That's a tough job. He sends Timothy other places, but he has to tell him God hadn't given us a spirit of timidity. When he sends him to Corinth, he has to tell Corinth, see, he has no cause to be afraid. Don't beat up on the boy. He's coming over there to help. Because sometimes congregation can grind individuals up. And Paul has to remind Timothy, take a deep breath. Get chin up, chest out. You ready to do battle. I got this one from Jim Hester gazillion years ago. Fear knocked at the door. Faith answered. No one was there. And so we got, yeah, but what if that might and this and that? I've loved that. I've cherished that ever since. In Proverbs chapter 28 and verse 1, the wicked flee when no one is pursuing, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. I've thought about many, many times that if you hear a siren right now, man, a guy that knows, oh man, I just knocked over the 7-Eleven, man, he is freaking out. He's thinking that, they're after me. It was an ambulance. Somebody got hurt or there's a fire or something. But the individuals that are totally on the wrong track, that's where their mind is. The police are getting after me. As a kid, I wasn't necessarily doing right things. And when I'd hear the siren, man, that started, oh, they're after me now. God, please don't let them catch me. And then I'll straighten up. Well, it was a while before that I'll straighten up ever came about. But I know that sense of, you know you're guilty, and maybe they're after me. But believers aren't that way. I'm doing fine. If the siren lights up, I'll pull over, and maybe it's a fire truck or an ambulance going by. They're not after me for robbing a bank. The righteous can be as bold as a lion. Why can Christians have hope? Because we trust in God. God is our refuge. Psalm 91, I think it's in verse 1, he said, I'll say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. That's the whole core of our lesson. Verse 4, he will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you may seek refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a bulwark. So if you're in a farmyard, you think, here's a mama chicken guarding her little babies. You know, if you're looking at an eagle's nest, why don't you just reach in? I am not reaching in an eagle's nest with mama sitting on the eggs. Why? She's there to defend her treasures. Psalm 91 verse 5 says, you will not be afraid of the terror by night or the arrow that flies by day. Yeah, but you know, what if they've released a biohazard, and what if they've got weapons and they attack in the day? He said, don't worry about it. He said, 1,000 may fall at your right side, 10,000 at your left, but it'll not approach you. Verse 8, you'll only look on and see the recompense of the wicked. I go, wow. That's horrendous. I'm so sorry that happened. But we don't happen to be part of that great catastrophe that other people go through. God is our refuge. So we have hope because we trust God. And I like this, that God's always ready, working all things together for good. Like Romans 28, one of our favorite scriptures. We know that all things work together for good. That, and I cite almost every time, not necessarily every particular event, aspect. Part of that is good, but it all comes out to have a good purpose. To those that love God, to those that are called according to his purpose. So you have to think about, have I been called? That 2 Thessalonians 2:14, we are called through the gospel. And then if I've been called, have I answered that call? And you can think about yourself. This isn't the end of the lesson, but it is an appeal for you to think about yourself. You say, you know, I need to respond. I hadn't been baptized. I believe in God, willing to repent of my sins. I'm willing to confess his name, but I've been reluctant to be baptized, and maybe I need to take that next step. Why Christians have hope? Because we trust in God. We are never abandoned. Hebrews 13 and verse 5, I will never desert you, nor will I forsake you. Therefore I will say, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? I like this imagery. Here is one arm reaching down into the water and the other arm reaching out. And think about God saying, I got you. You say, yeah, but I'm underwater. I say, I see you're underwater. I got you. Yeah, I might drown. Only if you stay underwater. I've got you. I love that attitude. When somebody said, I've got you. You can trust me. I'm not going to let go of you. That's what God is telling his people. And so, why can Christians have hope? Because God affirms to us, I'm never going to abandon you. Oh, look, man, this is lunchtime, and I don't take care, no calls during lunch, and I'm out here for 5 years or something. God said, I've always got your back. In Matthew 28 and verse 20, Jesus said, I am with you always. One version said, even to the very end of the age. And so I thought about that. What was the end of the age that Jesus was talking about? If it's AD 33, like we would commonly think of that. Did he say, I'm with you for the next, 40 years, and then you're on your own? In fact, everybody's on their own. We're not helping anybody in 40 years. Jerusalem destroyed, man. We don't care anymore. We are out of here. In fact, you can look at Matthew 13, 39 through 40, and 49 through 50. It talks about how these the tares, the enemy sowed the tares, the weeds in among the good seed, but they shall be removed at the end of the age. It may not matter to you, but I just try to do my homework, and generally commentaries that we would think have some value, whether McGarvey, Bowles, Barnes, Pulpit, Vincent Word Study, they all say that's the end of time. It doesn't mean I'm with you for the next, 20 minutes or so, and then my time is up. Christians, do we really believe that? As we face all the nutty things, they said, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? You're going to be fine. God says, I've got your back. I'm not going to let go of you. You've got hope. And then, why Christians have hope? Well, we trust in God. The Lord is our shepherd. Psalm 23 and verse 4, probably the most beloved passage in the Bible, at least across the United States. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for thou art with me. That is the times in life where it's dark, it's scary, and man, what's going to happen now? He said, the reason I don't fear is you're with me. I like this, Jesus with a lamb on his shoulders. It's just, sometimes people need a little whacking, and sometimes they need a little carrying, just depending on what their situation is. Isaiah 46 and in verse 3, even to your old age I shall be the same. Even to your graying years I shall carry you. I shall bear you, and I shall deliver you. God said, he's talking to his people, and Isaiah said, yeah, but now we got the Assyrians looking at us, and man, how that's going to work out? God said, I want to tell you, I've never let you down. I was taking care of you when you were little. Now you got gray hair, and I'm taking care of you now. But what if it's different now? He says, I don't care. I've always done it. Well, haven't I? Yeah. Well, okay. And so we have to remind ourselves, he's never let us down. He's never just let us drift out there. And he says, and I shall bear you. I'm going to keep on doing that. And I shall deliver you. And so think about this. The valley is temporary. The shepherd is eternal. A couple more and we'll wrap up. One of the things that gives us hope is perfect love casts out fear. In John 4:18, that is just the statement that John makes. He said, I want to tell you, we get afraid of, but if it's our senses, look, I'll do anything to make good things happen. Well, what if you don't succeed? Then I've given it at my absolute best. I don't dread. But what if Christ comes now and what if I'm not right? Well, then get right now. Say, God, I'm so sorry for disappointing you. I'll make it right to the very best of my ability. I want to be forgiven. If you're a Christian, you go to God in prayer. Confess your sin to him, your willingness to repent, and ask him for forgiveness. If you've not been baptized, then do that. Then you don't have to dread, what if he came? He said, I am ready. And Psalm 34 and verse 4, I sought the Lord and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Fear drives us to prayer. Prayer brings about confidence, and that drives fear away. So I want you to start interacting with God and get that taken care of. Why Christians have hope? Because we put our trust in God, and he's one who restores. I like this graphic. On the left-hand side, here's the parched wasteland. On the right, here's the lush green grass and blue skies. Joel, in chapter 2, verse 25, God says, I will restore the years that the locust has eaten. Sometimes people go through stuff, they get hammered for years. God says, I'm going to make it up to you. I'm going to turn it around. It's going to be better for you. Hope believes that no loss is beyond God's power to redeem. Think about this, what people need help with. In Psalm 41 and verse 3, here is health being restored. Malachi 4:16, turning the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the children to the fathers, restoring family relationship. Zephaniah 2 and verse 6, financial resources. Galatians 6 and verse 1, spiritual life. what do you need now? Where do you need restored? What are you ready to do? What blessing are you ready to receive? Are you ready to ask God, I'm willing to surrender, God, to your will, because I trust in you. And then finally, God gives peace beyond understanding. Philippians 4 and verse 7, the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. We had one of our elders here years ago, Rocky Wells, now in Texas. The calmest person I ever met. Mike is the second calmest person I've ever known. Hey, here's this stuff happening, and I said, Rocky, what do you think? He said, it'll be fine. It just was always calm. The reality is what? It's beyond comprehension, because God's in control. I don't control any of that. What about the weather? How about the government? How about finances? How about anything? I don't control anything. I'm here. I'm breathing at the moment. I don't have much control over that. God gives it as a blessing. I rejoice and thankful for it. In Matthew 6, verse 33 and 34. Now, think about this. Rather than being anxious, remember, all good will be added to you. So be not anxious about tomorrow. Yeah, but tomorrow's Monday. Yeah, and then there's Tuesday and Wednesday and Friday and Saturday after that. God's in control. I am at peace with that. Psalm 3 and verse 5, the Lord sustains me. I lay down and slept. I will not be afraid of 10,000 people who have set themselves against me. We got enemies. We've always had enemies. The enemies have enemies. That's just the way life is. But think about this. We trust in God, and that's why we have hope. Because God's on the throne. Nothing surprises him. He'll provide what is necessary for us. He has plans for good for our future. Fear isn't from God. God is our refuge. He works out all things together for good. He doesn't leave us alone. He cares for us. He casts out fear. He restores us. And he brings amazing peace. I mean, it's just joyful. There's always nutty stuff in the world. That's the world's business. Our business, serving God, encouraging one another. Thank you for being here this morning. If we can help you any way, we'd be honored to do so. This song, number 714, we'll be standing in just a moment, was the song that was led when I was baptized in Cleveland. I'm so glad you chose that. If you'd like to be baptized or talk about what it takes to be a Christian, we'd be happy to study